Hello everyone, today we have a deck tech on Bane Blue. It is a hard control deck that's very similar to the Boba Blue decks that were floating around before it got banned. And this is a list that I've done a lot of testing with and have settled on. So if you're in for hard control decks and that's your style of play, then this might be the deck for you. So you might be asking yourself, how is this a hard control deck with a bunch of units in it? And the reason being is because our units are treated more like event cards that are removal than they are actual units themselves. They impact the board right away, and they more often than not are going to be trading with your opponent's units. So if you noticed, a lot of them have ambush besides a couple of cards at the beginning of the game or are win conditions. And so they will just be trading with your opponent's units. So without further ado, let's get into the decklets itself. First off, we have Greedo. Great card. It's a 3-1. You're just going to use it to trade with your opponent's turn 1 plays. Maybe there's some instances where you will attack into something and then trigger its when defeated to deal an additional 2 damage. But that is kind of risky, so I like to just have a turn 1 play that can trade into another turn 1 play. Next, we have 2 Pike Sentinel. It's just a 2/3 with Sentinel. Not a whole lot to say about it. It helps slow your opponents down in the beginning stages. It's great on turn 1 and then pretty bad everywhere else. Next, we have 3 Bane, which is probably your worst turn 1 play. The reason being is it doesn't really impact the board at all, and it can't trade with any of your opponent's units. Really, you want to try to resource this early and then see it on the 7, 8, or 9 resource turn and take your opponent's bigger threat. Then we have 3 Cloud Rider, which is the best turn 1 play, and the reason being is it has the ambush, it has 3 power, it can trade into any of your opponent's turn 1 plays and prevent them from snowballing. And then keep in mind with the Cad Bane leader as well, when Cloud Rider or any of the other Underworld cards come into play, we can trigger that and ping something. And depending on how many units your opponent has, if they only have 1, then now your units are going to be doing additional damage. Next, we have 3 Power of the Dark Side. Pretty standard removal, great early to prevent your opponents from snowballing again, and great late as well. I really like to set up turns where I can go like Cloud Rider, defeat something, and on the next turn, whatever my opponent plays, I can Power the Dark Side and also defeat it. Then we have 2 Make an Opening and 3 Perilous Position. These cards are basically the same and they serve the same purpose. Perilous Position is just a better card because being able to exhaust a bigger unit is super important, and it can also exhaust your opponent's leaders as well, so that can be relevant. But mostly it's there for the space decks that are running Lurking TIE Phantom and 7th Fleet Defender, and Make an Opening is there for the same reason. I found that this deck was really struggling with those space decks, and because we don't play any space units, so there's no way to really have an answer for them outside the Perilous Position, but that just wasn't enough. So I tried adding in a couple of Make an Opening, and that made a significant difference because now I have more than just 3 ways to answer a turn 2 Lurking TIE Phantom, which is how this deck would lose against the space deck. Next, we have 3 Vigilance. Just your utility card for control. You can heal with it, you can kill something, you can mill your opponents out. It just is a great card that does a lot of different things depending on the matchup, and it's really something that you want to have 3 copies of. Next, we have 3 Takedown and 3 Fell the Dragon. Basically, they're just your standard removal. Not a whole lot to say about them. Takedown is for the early game, and then your Fell the Dragons are going to take out your opponent's bigger threats when the game goes later. And then our only 4-costed unit is Lompike. It's great, it has ambush. Yes, it can synergize with Zuckuss, but really you just have it as a turn 3 ambush into your opponent's thing, and you're probably going to trade with it. Again, remember, all we're trying to do is just prevent our opponents from snowballing. We just want to 1-for-1 with them until we can get to our bigger threats later in the game. The 5-costed units are where things really get interesting. I knew I wanted some combination of all these units, but I didn't really know how to break it down. Bosk is really good against the aggro decks, whereas Syndicate Lackeys is really good against the mid-range decks. And I think, at least with my meta, we have a little bit more mid-range, so that's why I wanted 2 copies of Syndicate Lackeys and 1 copy of Bosk. But then I also needed to include Zuckuss for the 4-Lom combo. I mean, Zuckuss is just a great unit by itself. It has great stats, but then it's really good with 4-Lom as well. So you just have to plan that accordingly. Like, Zuckuss is probably the best card in your deck once 4-Lom is out, but it's going to be your worst 5-costed unit if you do not have 4-Lom. And for that reason, I only have it at 2 copies. Then we have 2 Vanquish, again, standard removal card. It's going to serve a same purpose as Fell the Dragon. You're going to be targeting similar units, but I just wanted to have more access I wanted to have more copies of those removal cards, so I included the Vanquish in the main deck. Next, we have the All-Star of the control deck, and the reason to really be playing Cunning, in my opinion, is because of Bounty Hunter Crew. Again, it will come in and impact the board with its ambush, but it also can return a event to your hand. So, you can get back your Power of the Dark Side, your Takedown, your Vigilance, your Super Laser Blast, whatever you need. Bounty Hunter Crew can get that back. You can also use it to help in the Control Mirror to keep the Vigilance and Restock combo, which is in the sideboard. Keep that going. You can play Bounty Hunter Crew, get back Restock, or get back Vigilance, and just keep that train going so they can't ever mill you out. I did include 1 copy of Rivals Fall. I know since Boba got banned and you don't have to worry about the Boba and Boba Fett's armor anymore, a lot of people are off Rivals Fall, but I do just like having access to 1 copy over the 3rd Vanquish in the main deck. There have been events that I've ran into, like Churits or other leaders that just get super big and are difficult to answer. So I just wanted to have access to something in the main deck to just be a straight up 1-for-1 answer. And that's why I included it. Next, we have 2 Cad Bane. Great card. It's kind of a mini board wipe in a way, where you can set up before you get like Super Laser out or after you get Super Laser out. But being able to take your opponent's things is just going to take them off their tempo plan and really turn it back in your favor. But it also is a card advantage where when you're trying to beat them down or attack them, you put them in an awkward position of, do they give you 2 more cards to get that unit back? And there are plays that, with Cad Bane, you can play Cad Bane, then trigger your Cad Bane leader to do a damage to something, and then resolve your Cad Bane units when played ability to now take more things than you could before. So just keep that in mind. Next, we have 3 copies of Super Laser Blast. Not a whole lot to say about that. It's just your standard board wipe. And then we have 2 Supreme Leader Snokes. Great against aggro and mid-range. Great against the space decks. Can also help you trade more favorably into other units with your ambush units. And it's just a way to also, close out the game. And then finally in the main deck, we have 2 copies of Avenger. It's just going to be the best closer and the best win condition for control decks. Again, similarly to the other cards, it does impact the board state right away, and that's another reason for including it over something else. As far as the sideboard goes, we have access to 1 restock for the control mirror, just to allow the vigilance combo to go and to prevent ourselves from getting milled out. Again, with Bounty Hunter Crew, it combos there, and that's going to be the way that you win most of your control matchups. Since both decks play so many event cards and hard removal cards, your units are never going to stick around, so you need to have another plan to win, and that's where the vigilance and restock package becomes important. Then we have 3 top targets, great against aggro, not a whole lot else to say about it. Then we have 3 Spark of Rebellion, which is really good against the control decks, and also the ramp decks like Palpatine. It's similar to Bane when you smuggle Bane, because that costs 4. So now our Spark of Rebellion, since we're playing it out of aspect, will also cost 4, but it completely gets rid of something and your opponent doesn't get to replace it, which is nice. Then we have our 3rd copy of Vanquish and our 2nd copy of Rival's Fall. Those just come in for the control matchup, and it also will come in against the ramp decks as well. We just need more ways to answer their bigger threats because they're going to have more of them. And then last but not least, we have our 3rd copy of Cad Bane that we will also bring in for mid-range and aggro decks. One other thing I wanted to go over is some of the cards I didn't include and why they were not included. These were just common questions I had from people locally or friends on like the social medias. So let's go over that. First we have McClunky, and although this can combo with like Bounty Hunter Crew, or like on turn 1 you can play Greedo, bounce it with McClunky and kill their something else. It's also great with Bane, where you can play Bane, steal their best card, bounce it, do 3 damage to something, play Bane later. It was just too slow. Just have better answers, and we just didn't need it. Entrenched is another card that I considered including, but again, we just have other ways to kill units. I think it could be good against Lurking TIE Phantom, right? Because now they can't attack your base. But we already have answers for that, so I don't need more. I think we really would only want it against other space decks, but we have plenty of answers for the space decks now. No to Good to Me Dead is very similar to Entrenched, where we're just going to be tapping something down, but our Perilous Position already kind of does that. So we don't need more copies of the same card. I'd rather just have hard removal that can completely get rid of something. Now the next couple of cards are pretty much not included for the same reason, and that being is we're not like a mid-rangey soft control deck. Our units that we're playing need to impact the board right away. Boba Fett, 7th Fleet Defender, and Lurking TIE Phantom don't impact the board right away. They come in and they just sit there, and you can't do anything with them until the following turn. So that's why I did not include them. I'd rather just have something else that can take out my opponent's unit right away. Same thing for the Black Sun Starfighter is, yes, your opponent has to attack into it, but if they have a space deck, then they maybe just throw the 7th Fleet Defender into it, and just lose a shield or something else, right? So again, it just doesn't impact the board the way that we want it to, so it wasn't included. Now There Are Two of Them is a really interesting card. I really do like the card, but I don't think this is the right deck for it. I think if we were playing the Cad Bane red or Cad Bane green, or even, Cad Bane blue, but more mid-rangey, then we would play Now There Are Two of Them for sure. But since we are playing more events and less units, it's just a card that we didn't really need. Long Pike was a card that I did include for the first couple of iterations of the deck, but it was just too slow. It just didn't, again, impact the board the way that I wanted it to. So I ended up cutting it. I think actually for the make-in openings, I had 2 Long Pikes originally, and I cut those for the 2 make-in openings to help out our space matchup, and that just seemed to be a lot better for me and for the deck than having the Long Pikes. I did include the Execute Order 66 for a while, and the reason being is because there's a lot of Jedi decks that are kind of popping up. You have like the Anakin Blue decks, or some of those other decks out there that are playing like a lot of the blue heroism cards, like the Lukes and the Mace Windu's, or the Obi-Wans, different things like that. And Execute Order 66 is just a straight up board wipe answer for all of them, but outside of that, it does nothing against other decks. So I did have it in the sideboard for a while, but took it out because there just wasn't as many players playing with the Jedi units lately. But if you do have a lot of those, those blue red hero decks, and they're playing a lot of Jedi units, then that might be something to consider. But I definitely only put it in the sideboard. And last but not least, Enfree's Nest. This is really interesting because we are playing a lot of ambush units. So you think that this guy would be great, especially since it's going to help save our units, but ultimately I just didn't have room for it. I think the other cards in the deck are far more important, and I would only include this as a one of, but the Rival's Fall is kind of taking that slot, and I think is more important anyways. Go ahead, give this deck a try. It's a ton of fun to play, and let me know in the comments if there's anything that you like or don't like about the list, and things that you would change, or if you give the deck a try, and I'd love to hear how it goes. So we'll see you next time. Thanks.